Folks, Toronto landlords want out. I'll get into that. And then the latest home prices and insights for the city of Toronto for week ending April 10th, 2024. If you've not yet subscribed, consider subscribing. So lately, it seems I'm getting more and more calls of landlords wanting to sell their investment property. They want out, or at the very least, they don't want to deal with tenants anymore. Now, before I get into everything I'm going to talk about here, I should say there are terrible tenants and great tenants out there. And there's also terrible landlords and great landlords out there. And this is, really kind of just dealing with the situation that I see happening more and more right now than at any other time. So I'm getting a lot more calls of landlords saying they don't want to do this anymore. They don't want to deal with the tenants. Now, for sure, some of these calls are just about the finances. The tenant is great, but the climate for being cash flow positive, it's not what it used to be. So they want out purely for financial reasons. It doesn't make sense anymore for them to have an investment property. But there's the growing number of landlords that want out of being a landlord, because of the whole dealing with the tenant aspect and how it's an uphill battle when you're trying to get, somebody on your side to help you out with a tenant that is not so great. I'm going to share a story. It's a personal story. One of my friends a while back inherited a home. Him and his wife decided that they were going to convert this single family home into 3 different apartments. So basement, main floor, top floor. This wasn't that long ago. And they weren't, it's not like they on their own owned a house and had the other things going on in real estate. This was kind of like their entry into owning their first property. And so they inherited this property and thought, let's do this. Let's, instead of us together living in this one big home, let's use this as a springboard for us to do better in real estate and be more secure and to grow from there. So they thought, 1, 2, 3 apartments, we're going to live in one and we'll rent out the other 2. And over time, the rent is going to help us to cover the cost of renovations and then help us to build a nest egg. And then we'll see, maybe we'll buy another property and rent it out, or, we'll see what we do. But the idea is that they were going to accumulate this wealth from having tenants, because they didn't need all the space to themselves. So that's what they did. And fast forward only about a year later, they've had enough. There's so many stories that they've told me just in a short period of time that they've lived in this situation where they're in a house and tenants are also, 2 other tenants are in the same property, but they've had issues with these tenants, and my friends are adamant that the landlord and tenant board to them is useless. Everything is stacked in their opinion. And we've heard this opinion from a lot of different landlords. It seems everything is stacked against them. So, they're learning that, and they've had enough. They want out. They want to sell. They want to do something else. And so we looked at pricing. And they seemed pretty excited when we started discussing the whole they want to sell and pricing. They seemed happy to get out of this because of the rentals and what they did, and built this single family home into 3 apartments, into a multifamily home. They thought that, they really are going to do extremely well. But when we looked at pricing, and when we looked in the neighborhood of other similar multifamily homes, those properties were selling for less than what the single family homes were selling for. And they found it hard to believe. They were telling me, but Santo, this is an income producing property, and they're showing me what they're collecting in rents, when they're actually collecting rents, but they're showing me what they're collecting in rents and going through all the numbers. And I said, look, I agree with you. But the reason you've had enough and want out of the landlord business is the same reason that the buyer pool of people buying this, that buyer pool is much smaller. Families we're seeing tend to spend way more on a home if it's for their own personal use and they can enjoy the property themselves. They'll spend way more on that than something that is going to be split up and rented out. And those negatives that are associated with having the rental income, experienced investors know these things. And to them, it's strictly the numbers and what makes sense, and cap rate and all these other factors come into play, that there's very little emotion involved. And plus, they know already, the experienced investors, the headaches they've got to go through if they need to deal with the landlord and tenant board. And so, and the financial climate these days to buy investment properties is not what it used to be. So that the pool of buyers prepared to buy this type of home is way smaller than what it used to be. And the ones that are prepared to buy are paying less. And that was the reality that my friend is faced with, that they want out. And for the same reason that they want out, it makes it harder for someone else to buy. It's just not making sense financially to expect to get more for their home than what some of the single family homes have been selling for in the area. So, in conclusion, I would like to say it seems really a great idea to rent something out and somebody else is going to pay your mortgage on its own. Just, that comment, that phrase, beautiful idea, beautiful thought. And wow, that's wonderful that someone else is going to pay your mortgage. But it's not isolated to just that. You got to take everything else that comes along with that. If you are living in a home and renting your basement and someone's helping you with your expenses and to pay your mortgage, that's great. But you're also got to deal with all the negatives that come with having someone else live in your home. And many, many, many times, no issues, everything is wonderful. But we never talk about those. We always talk about the bad situation, because when it's bad, it could be really bad. What if they're noisy? What if they're not paying the rent? The whole purpose of them being there is to help you with your mortgage. What if something happens and they're not paying their rent? Well, that's out the window. And you still got the negatives of having to share your home. What if it's another home altogether, a condo or a home that you've got rented out? There's responsibilities that come with being a landlord. Let's not just focus on the positives, because we got to take the good with the bad. And a lot of people are choosing not to go that route. The climate for landlord-tenant is not what it used to be. If you think this video can help somebody pass it along. If you enjoy the content, subscribe. And if you want to speak with me about your real estate situation, it's really simple. Up here, there's a link to my calendar. Below this video in the description, there's a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you. We'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Now, let's get into the numbers. Here we go, folks. City of Toronto. Let's see what's happening here. We've got detached properties, towns and semis. I put condos here for reference, but we're really going to be dealing with the freehold market in this video. But overall, if we look back, prices seem to be trending upwards. I have here on the board from January 10th to April 10th, 3 months. Overall, prices in every segment have been trending up. Let's look a little bit closer. We're going to start off with detached properties. For week ending April 10th, 186 detached properties were sold. Why do I say that with a bit of enthusiasm? Well, sales are up, and overall sales have been trending up. We would expect sales to be trending up as we head into the spring season. The previous week, 121 were sold, which is way down from the previous week. And I had mentioned, look, it was the Easter long weekend. We often see a dip in sales over any long weekend, and that's what happened. So sales dropped Easter long weekend, and now we're, boom, up there, much higher sales than we've had any time this year. 46 of those sales were at $2 million or more, which is the highest number we've seen in a while. There was 1 week here in September, and then we've got to go back to June last year to hit 46 properties selling at $2 million or more. And let's look at the sales now, the average sold price. So for week ending April 10th, average sold price is $1,740,000. If we look in the short term, yeah, kind of looks like average prices are trending up. If we go more long term, since the beginning of the year, also looks like overall average sold prices are trending up. This is for detached properties only right now, and just for the city of Toronto. Compared to last year, 1,740, 1% lower than where we were a year ago. The median price is 1% higher than where we were this time a year ago. 186 were sold, 65% sold at list price or more. It's somewhat competitive out there, folks. 65% selling at list price or more, and that percentage over time, over the last 2-3 months, has been increasing. The market is getting more and more competitive. 355 were listed, so that's a higher number than what we saw previously, January, February, and at some point we bounced up to 368 from low 300s, high 200s to 368 listed, 351 listed, 355 listed. I'm ignoring the 245 because we've got these bigger numbers there. Active listings is on the rise also, and months of inventory previous week was at 2.4. But remember what I said in the last week's video? It's Easter weekend, sales dropped, which kind of has the effect of making months of inventory seem higher than what they actually were. And I said that we should see it fall more in line to where it actually is this week. Well, that's what happened. We're sitting at 1.5 months of inventory, and 1.5, if we go all the way back to the beginning of February, is kind of about the norm that we're used to over the last couple of months, around 1.5 months of inventory. Now, that's a seller's market. It's not typically what we'd consider an aggressive seller's market, because we've seen it where months of inventory are 1 or below 1. So 1.5 is in the middle of a seller's market. Average price is slowly trending upwards. That's the detached market for the whole city of Toronto. Let's break it down to 9 parts of the city here. Now, all Toronto, we said, is 1.5 months of inventory. There's parts of Toronto really outperforming the whole area. You've got Scarborough at 1.1 months of inventory. East York, Riverdale, the beaches area, 0.8 months of inventory. Extremely competitive. 72% of those properties were selling at list price or more. You've got High Park, 1.4 months of inventory. Etobicoke, 1.2 months of inventory. You can go on. And you've got some of the other areas at 2.5 months of inventory, 2.9 months of inventory for Willowdale. And again, back down to York Mills, Rosedale is 2.5. So different buying or selling experience depending on which side of the table you're on there. Overall, though, still, if we're looking at some of the higher areas, 2.5, 2.9, it's not like that's terrible and the market is bottoming them out or anything. It's I would say, a healthy, somewhat strong market right now. I know experiences out there of listening to news and this and that out there is maybe going to tell you something else, but I'm telling you, as a realtor on the ground working with buyers and sellers, this is what we're experiencing out there. It's competitive. Let's look at semi-detached properties. 66 semi-detached properties were sold. Those are the highest sales in a single week we've seen this year so far. 19 of those are at sold at $1.5 million or more. Also, that's the most we've seen in a long time as far as properties selling at semi selling at 1.5 million or more. Average sold price, it did come down a bit from last week to 1,304,000, but I would say overall over the last 2 months, average prices for semis are trending upwards. 1,304 is 2% higher than where we were this time a year ago, and the median price is 6% higher. Months of inventory, extremely low, sitting at 0.8 months of inventory. 68% of the semis sold at list price or more. So it's competition. Townhouses, we never see really that many. These are freehold townhouses, not that many sales, so the sampling isn't there. 16 were sold. 5 of those were at $1.5 million or more. So almost a third of the townhouses that sold at 1.5 million or more. Average sold price seems almost on a weekly basis, although there's a few up and down, but generally speaking, prices have been trending upwards for freehold townhouse. For week ending April 10th, sitting at 1,359,000. 1,359, big difference, 15% higher year over year. The median price is 16% higher year over year. Months of inventory sitting at 1.8 months of inventory. A little bit over half, 56% selling at list price or more. Here's a quick summary of months of inventory. I've put condos in this, even though I'm not speaking about condos. That's a different video. That's tomorrow's video, condos for the GTA. But you can see a huge difference in months of inventory. It's a whole different buying or selling experience when you're comparing the condo market to the freehold market. The freehold is pretty much a seller's market. It is going to be a lot more competitive than the condo market that's out there. You could pretty much not, if you're expecting to be in a buyer's market, few and far between in the city of Toronto. It's mostly, you might see some areas that are more of a balanced market, but the majority is going to be more of a seller's market. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.